Yo, what's up guys? Before we jump into the video, I just want to say that mastering is a very sophisticated topic. There's no perfect way of getting it right, and it's very subjective, and there's no rules with music. So embrace your genuine differences. We're all different artists, and not all of our songs are going to sound the same. Now, with that being said, this video, I'm making mastering for a specific song to make it sound similar characteristics and the loudness of a song, not exactly, but at least the loudness. And I'm going to be making a video after this with universal things that I would always do on a master, regardless of what the song will be. That way it'll help you guys, and for the guy that suggested Mike, so you know, okay, is it a good idea to use a stereo imager? Is it not a good idea to use the compressor? There are things that are done all the time in mastering, but at the same time, and why I made this video, every track you make is different, so they all need different care. You know what I'm saying? It's like a car. A car has specific stuff. A Tesla comes in and it needs care for the battery, it needs care for this. But at the same time, and that's why I'm making the next video, there are some basic foundations. The Tesla still has a round wheel. The Tesla still, is a car at the end of the day. So I'm going to be making that video and look forward to seeing that. But in the meantime, enjoy this video. Remember to smash up the likes, and I'll see you in the next mastering universal tip video. Yo, what's up everybody? Welcome to another Shamshir Sound video. My name is Ali Nadem, and in today's video, we're going to be looking at one of you guys' comments. Mike Carr says, can you make a tutorial about how you match the volume of your song with a commercial during the mastering process? Also, your mastering chain, I know you've made 2 to 3, but I want to see a universal, not for a specific song. So we're going to touch base on mastering chains, when it's right to use something, when it's not. And this is just a PSA, this is all my opinions. These are all, it's not the most best way or correct way or factual way. You have to remember music is subjective. And I think he's talking about commercial music with a commercial music. So we're going to talk about comparing our song and how to get the loudness. So we're going to talk about in this video how to know the loudness and the key of the track we're working with to be competitive with it. And also, when is it right to put on an EQ or a master, multi-band compressor, or whatever it might be. And first, before we jump into all that, guys, I really want to say with what Mike said here, a universal, there are some stuff that are universal. Everyone is going to have a limiter on their track. There are some cases where maybe multi-band compression is not necessary. There are some cases where an SSL compressor or a compressor could do more harm than good. And as Laid Back Luke said, a lot of times you have a track that has great ideas, but is so over compressed in like the mastering stage that it takes away almost like the soul and the life away from it, because it becomes so sterilized. It becomes so like, I don't know how to put it into words, but when you listen to it, you'll know, that's why dynamics are a beautiful thing. But with EDM, loudness war is always going to be prominent, and it still is very strong. Even though Spotify and YouTube have reduced their volume levels and they normalize it to minus 12 LUFS, still for SoundCloud, for playing it at the club, for dropping that, you need that loud track. It's got to be competitive. So we're going to talk about first knowing the volume of the track that we're working with. So I wanted to get a track to show you guys how I would master it to compare to the commercial loud track. So I grabbed this one. It's Unreleased. It's E minor. And it's called Turn It Up. So a quick listen to this.
Turn it up.
So it's like an electro track. And what's important is that we listen to something like Voxengo Span, and we take a look. So when the drop hits, you're going to want to go to the drop. And we can see that, this, of course, is around like -4, -3. The RMS is -19. So it needs to be cranked up. It needs to be turned into like a sausage. That's why when we look at this here, this is so loud. This is a track by KEVU and Club Banditz called 2K People. It's on Revealed, and this track is loud. This track is in the same key. So I recommend, if you guys are trying to replicate a certain sound during the mastering stage, if you're doing like EQ matching or something, try to find something of the same key, because you have to remember the way those sub frequencies look are going to be different for each track. A track that's in like G might have a stronger bass than one that's in like C minor all the way down to C. So you have to always keep in mind those things, those nuances. So this one is also in E minor, I believe. Now, I don't need to listen to this, but I just got to run it through Voxengo. And when we have it at the drop here, we can see that we're working with just over -7 RMS. So -6.7, -6.6. It's also a good idea to hover your mouse over here and see kind of where the bass lies as well. We can see that the subsonic frequencies kind of stop around that -27 threshold for this RMS. And these are all important because bass actually takes up more space. What do I mean? It takes up more space. So you could have a track that's like hollow and empty and there's nothing in it but like a huge ass kick. And that kick is actually going to drive the RMS through the roof because it takes up more space. Think of bass frequencies. They have a really big waveform. It travels a longer distance. So that's why it takes up more space. So whether your track sounds good or not, and whether the track is full, and when I say full, that it has a lot of frequencies, it's kind of spread throughout the stereo field. You got some wide sounds, you got some mono sounds. The RMS and how loud it is not an indication of whether the track is good or not. Those are important, but like if the track is not good, it doesn't matter if it's -5 RMS or -10 RMS. It just won't be good. And one thing that Maddox says from Revealed, he says that, he either gets tracks that are too mono, everything's in the center, or stuff that's just too wide. And I can agree with that. I've had people send me tracks where the kick is in stereo. And you have to remember, when you make EDM, it's a good idea to always keep in mind the platforms you want to be played on, If you want it to be listened to in the car, if you want it to be listened to in the clubs, a lot of these systems in the clubs and whatnot put everything in the mono field. And because they put everything in the center, the kick has to be on point. If your kick is weak, you will find out the hard way. Like Armin van Buuren said, you'll find out the hard way if the kick is not strong. Because if the kick's not strong, everything else in EDM kind of just falls apart. So with this guy, we know, okay, it's around -6 RMS as like the highest. So let's just say -6.5. So if we're working with -6.5, let's just call this aim for -6.5 RMS, or E minor, whatever we're doing there. And I'm going to mute this. And you can route this directly to the master. If you want a bit more plugins you want to run it to like something like insert 1. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to just start seeing what we want to add to it. And the thing is, it always changes, guys. There's no right or wrong way. There's no universal way. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. This track could need a lot more love. It might not need it. There are tracks that I'm making these days that I'm really satisfied with how they are. And just a simple limiter on the master, or even like an EQ and a limiter. You don't have to do 20 plugins. So it always depends on the situation. It's situational. Because you have to remember, mastering, we're not listening to the song and like just enjoying the song. Yeah, we can enjoy it, but you have to also listen to it and just listen for problems. You got to think, how do you want to deploy this song? What is it stacking up against? There's a lot of philosophy going into this. But again, there's no right or wrong way. So let's go ahead and listen to the drop. Turn it up. One thing I'm going to slap on, because I've been loving this, it came with my Focusrite 2i2. This beautiful multiband compressor, the Intelligent Master Processor Drummer S73 from Softtube. I really love this. And I'll tell you why, because you can also do a very transparent sound. It's almost like an enhancer for individual plugins, master. I really love this one, and I'm going to do a separate review on this, but you can also do parallel compression. Parallel is when you're doing like half and half of the dry signal, half of the wet signal, to get the best of both worlds. But I actually really like this, even with its neutral. But you can try this out, guys. Put it on, try the different modes. I really recommend you guys purchase this. This is an amazing plugin. So immediately what I noticed there is it gained some presence. It was lacking some presence. It's now gained some presence in there. So let's leave the drummer on. What we're going to do next is on the master, let's put on like a clipper. And the clipper, think of this as, it can get confusing, but a soft clipper is basically a limiter, but it just sets like a level, and it's like, okay, kick is loudest, everything below it is not going to be as loud as the kick. Kick is the highest. And it sets a level, and you set the slope. The slope dictates, is it a hard curve or is it a soft curve? The harder the curve, the more powerful and punchy the dynamics will be. The softer the curve, as you turn it to the left, the softer it will be and more pleasant. It might work better for like a classical track, or like as you back it off, maybe it might actually sound better in your EDM track. But I just turn it all the way to the right. So this just hard clips it at 0 dB. It's just like, think of it as like the, I don't even know, SpongeBob Bikini Bottom Muscle Man limiter, basically. So, and it's used by a lot of EDM pioneers. So I'm going to leave that there. Let's go ahead and play it. So just like the guy said, turn it up. Let's turn it up like 4 dB. Let's just leave this at 6 dB. And with it at 6 dB, let's quickly look at Voxengo span. What are we dealing with? So we're already pushing like minus 8.5 RMS, but one thing you'll notice is that our high end is like going in the opposite direction of KEVU. KEVU has his kick bass like up here, and he has his highs kind of roll off, and that's kind of similar to the ear, where we hear that bass frequency and kind of like it kind of slowly goes down like this, almost like pink noise, like it kind of goes down. And so with those highs, it might be a good idea for us to correct that here. And what I'm going to recommend is first, let's see if we can also cut out some of the lows. Cutting out the lows very sharp way using this parametric EQ is a beautiful way. Don't turn on the oversampling, because I find that when I turn on the oversampling, it will really change the quality for the worse, I find. For me personally, I just leave it off and I roll it at 20 kilohertz and 20 hertz. Depending on the track that you're working on, sometimes you want to crank this a bit higher, but this can remove some of the subsonic frequencies and high frequencies that aren't audible, while also creating a bit more loudness. There are some tricks you can do to create more loudness. So now we're pushing, yeah, so we're like around minus 9 RMS, I believe. Yeah, let's just say minus 9 RMS. However, those levels, like I said, the high end is going crazy. Let's quickly look at this guy. You can see here, his high end is like way down here, minus 34, minus 35. And so every track is made different. It doesn't mean that I have to look like KEVU. I can have a bit higher, brighter, higher end. I can have a less of a low. You know, this is what makes all of us artists be different. So embrace your genuine difference. You don't need to make your track sound exactly like Skrillex. So this is just like some 2 cents, you know. It's just like we're just seeing what we can do. So again, I'm gonna roll span down there. So what we'll do next is we're gonna add some sort of like multi-band compressor that can give us maybe a bit better control. So I'm just thinking here, what is something that we can kind of glue everything together a bit more? I kind of want to stick with the fruity stuff, but an EQ might also be a good option. So here, let's just try Pro MB. This is a multi-band compressor. We'll leave the look ahead on. Okay, and let's go ahead and listen to this. Let's turn off the clipper. To make this quick, we're just going to set this at 1000. Usually I like spreading out the bands, like one at 10K or one here, wherever, but I'm just going to put it here and just kind of back down the threshold. now we'll turn back on Clipper. It's a better idea to put your stuff on linear phase when you're working with EQ or compressor when possible. And next I'm going to I think I'm going to put on parametric EQ again, but I think I'm going to try and just roll off some stuff here. Easy way we can really boost this RMS is also giving it a bit more punchiness, a bit more oomph, and we can either roll this up like this, or we can also dial in specific notes. So I think I'm going to dial in specific notes. So what I'm going to do is right before this multiband compressor, I'm going to put on Q2, put on linear phase, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in, because we're working with E, so type in like E1, maybe type in E2, maybe even E0. Okay, we don't need to do E0, 20 hertz. So what we'll do is we'll tighten these, tighten the ratio. Maybe we'll put it at like, I don't know, maybe like 8. And what we'll do is we'll just see what this sounds like. We'll crank up the gain. Let's add one in this higher frequency, because a lot of times you have to remember it's not all about the sub. The frequencies from 200, 300, 400, they connect you to the sub. So a lot of times when you hear a track and the bass is amazing, it's because the frequencies from 200, 300, 400 are very powerful, and they pull your ear into the subsonic frequencies. They connect the dots. So make sure that, because a lot of times I've always had problems with like the low mid, and when I say low mid, I mean like anywhere from maybe 120 to like 500 hertz, you know, so pay attention to those frequencies there. So let's see here. E4 is 320, E3. Why not? You know what? Let's try and give it a little love, a little bit bass love, you know, a little bass love. E4. Let's do the same thing there, and I'm just gonna crank these up until it's like audible. So now we've given it some bass love, and what we can do too is we can even say, you know what, I'm gonna slap on another drummer. Let's try and beef this thing up. And what we'll do is I'll experiment with these clarity, maybe add some air. The air is not on until you actually switch it on, so this knob won't do anything with it off. So let's see what we got. what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to A/B these two. I'm just going to change classic clipper. I'm just going to slap it on track 1. And I just want to do that so I can quickly reference the two. You could also, I've done this at times too, you can also run multiple instances of FL Studio. Keep that in mind. So if you guys want to Alt-Tab and you have like a different track in a different project, you can always do that too. I've done that. See how we've come a long way, right? And let's just turn this off so you guys can see where it came from. Generally, it's just louder, but there is also some presence and some bass being boosted, some high end being attenuated. And what we'll do, kind of like the cherry on top, is we'll use a de-esser. A de-esser, guys, is typically used on vocals, but a lot of amazing masters use it on their master. Nice little joke there. When you guys compress high-end frequencies, use a very quick release. You don't want it like, turn down the release for 2 seconds. Okay, the release for 10 seconds. No, you want a fast release. You want that being like triggered technically for problems, right? So here I want to make it kind of attenuate the high end if there's too much cymbals and crashiness. So this de-esser is very powerful, very simple. And we'll see if we can kind of clean up some of the high end. So I'm just going to look for, I just have it muted, and I'm just going to look for where it's kind of being triggered. Okay. Might be a good idea to also run that before the drummer, because the drummer can kind of like clean that up if maybe something was not as good sounding. Or maybe too dark. So we can see there it's kind of being triggered a whole lot. Let's go ahead and listen. One thing I'm gonna do right before either the de-esser or drummer is I'm going to put saturation knob. Great for individual tracks, but if used very slightly on the master, I think it can give it a little bit of power. I'm going to select keep high so I can keep the high end frequencies untouched, because we're going to saturate a bit of that low end. Give it a little bit more rumble. So let's take a look at our levels here. So I kind of want to do maybe a final EQ before we wrap that up, because I still need to kind of get that a bit louder. I don't want to go too much louder on the clipper. It's good to go super loud, find the point where it distorts, and I'll do that right now. So we're at the loudness level of them. So we've achieved kind of like the loudness, maybe just a bit off, because I think they're minus 6.5. 6.8. Generally the same, but let's take a look at the frequencies. So I think the kind of final nail in the coffin for this will be a method of just maybe we'll do either dynamic EQ. If we do a dynamic EQ, that might actually be a really good idea. If we do dynamic EQ, let's kind of change the shape. We'll do like high shelf, and we'll do it like this. And maybe we'll bounce the low end upwards. That might be a good idea. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we got this low shelf here. Now this is going to be a bit tricky because at the same time I might want to not only make this linear phase but do a final roll off, because with the saturation knob and boosting those lows, it can introduce some low end that I didn't want. So let me just try this. I'll try like 48 dB. Okay, so 48 dB at 20 hertz, maybe even a bit lower. Let's just put it right there. And we'll roll off these highs here. Slope, high cut. And we'll do 48 dB, and we'll put 1 for the Q, and we'll put it at like 20,000. Okay, so now we are going to see what we can do with this. For now, I'm going to just disable this, play it back. Alright, so let's do a final comparison.
Turn it up.
I think I'm just going to back off that high shelf just a bit. There we go. This sounds pretty good, guys. You can see I wouldn't have... That's the first time I did a dynamic EQ on the master. This is the first time I put 2 instances of this drummer. I've only used drummer like once since I recently got it. And I've never used like 2 parametric EQs. So this mastering chain that I just did here is specifically for this track, because you got to remember, every track is made differently. So every track needs different types of care. But you always want to keep in mind what the goal is. Get out a piece of paper or jot it down in your mind. Make a mental note of what is the goal. What are you trying to sound like? What is the track you're trying to go like? What's the RMS you're trying to go for? And I hope what I did here, stage by stage, showed you that there isn't, unfortunately, you know, it's not like some Aunt Jemima pancakes, just add water. It unfortunately is, due to the nature of the beast, you got to go in there and treat it differently. And if this was a different track of mine, I might have just been okay with like a limiter and EQ. But in this case, there was problems because the mix down was probably lacking. So you can do some stuff to help the mix down, and you just have to identify and go step by step. So I hope you guys like this video. It's not that difficult getting your track at the right volume. I think what is more important is what's in the track, because KEVU's track sounds dope. Let's play like 5 more seconds of it. And when we listen to mine,
Turn it up.
so mine is a bit harsher, but we're all different artists, so embrace yourself, your different vision, and every song is going to sound different. And you know, I notice that when I'm making my mixes now, and I recommend to you guys, if you're having problems, get more into doing like live mixes on Tractor or on Serato or something, because then you're going to realize why your song doesn't match with another song and what the problems could be. And I think a lot of people overlook the benefits of being a DJ, and that way you get to see, okay, oh, this track is got some really crappy low end. Oh, this track sounds terrible. It's way too loud. So hope you guys liked this video. If you guys enjoyed this, remember to smash the like button. Remember to drop a comment. Let me know if you guys have any requests for future videos, and make sure you guys are subscribed for all the future notifications. Smash that bell up, you know what I'm saying? And I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, keep making some bangers. I'll see you soon.